The Kraken have one more game left in this homestand, and Nashville's coming to town. They take on Smashville. So what are the Seattle Kraken focused on before they take on Smashville?
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what do you say, Seattle hockey fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we bring you your favorite team, the Seattle Kraken, and their affiliates every single day. My name is Erica L. Ayala. I am your host of Locked On Kraken, and if you want to follow me or my venture Black Rosie Media, we're over at Blue Sky these days. So same handle, just on a different platform. Want to let you know today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at Indeed. Still searching for great candidates for your company? Don't search, just match with Indeed. And that's kind of what the Seattle Kraken are trying to do. They're hopefully not searching too much more for that golden ticket back to the postseason, but instead they're trying to match some things, mix and match some things. And I want to start with just some updates. We know that Jordan Eberle has been hurt. We heard from Dan Bylsma today after practice. He's gone through more series of tests, more evaluations, and the process right now is to get the results back from these evaluations, see how the evaluations, which perhaps include some on-ice maneuvering, what those yield, and then have a more of a timeline for his return. Same is effectively true for Vince Dunn. Doesn't look like he is quite ready yet. And so that does mean that the search for better for the Seattle Kraken is going to have to come from within. Daniel Sprong talked about this on Sunday's episode and yesterday's episode, but we heard from Daniel Sprong today. He reiterated a lot of what he was saying, that getting to participate in practices with the team and to be able to be a part of, he was asked about the power play units and things of that nature. He does feel that that's going to help his game. He's going to be another key player, not just for the game against Nashville tomorrow, but for the next handful of games that the Seattle Kraken have on the docket. And that is because we know that, this is a team, as we heard Dan Bylsma say, where they have to get contributions from throughout the entire lineup. We talked about the Beniers line being very effective per Allison Lucan's post-game analytics after the Rangers game, but also in other post-game analytics, and honestly, including in the last game against the Rangers, during that winning streak, the fourth line was the most impactful line, generating in one game 100% of the quality shots on net. And so being able to spread that love, it's the Brooklyn way, to being able to spread that love throughout the roster is going to be huge. And so Ben Meyers, a part of that. We talked a little bit about Ben Meyers slotting in for Shane Wright. Daniel Sprong coming back. I thought it was interesting. He was asked kind of how the circumstances brought him back to Seattle. He once again reiterated that, he didn't want to leave Seattle to begin with, but he was very grateful that Seattle understood that he wanted to go get a bag, right? He wanted to make some money, and the organization empowered him to be able to do that. That led to Detroit first, then Vancouver. It was interesting because Daniel Sprong said he didn't really want to get into it, but then also let us know that the trade was initiated on the Vancouver side. He was a little blindsided by that. So he wasn't expecting to come back to this Seattle team, but he does seem content, even more so, to be back in Seattle. And I think now it's just, can we find a way to get the Daniel Sprong that we remember in season 2 or even beyond that? In the Dan Bylsma system, because that was Dave Haxtell. That was also Morgan Geekie was on that line, along with Ryan Donato and Daniel Sprong. So he's only 1/3 of that combination. How can he get some of that mojo back for himself, but also for the Seattle Kraken? So I found that interesting, but really no updates when it comes to the long-term injury status of Vince Dunn or the status of Jordan Eberle. I also thought it was interesting that Dan Bylsma was asked and did communicate about the trend that we talk about all the time on Locked On Kraken, and that is that the team plays better in front of Joey Daccord or literally any other goaltender than they do in front of Philip Grubauer. This is what Dan Bylsma had to say. I don't think there's anything to make of it, but he also did say it's factual. So it's just one of those fluke stats, perhaps. Maybe we'll have to have Allison Lucan back on the podcast to break down if there's anything in advanced analytics that's giving us some indication other than just kind of luck of the draw. Again, Philip Grubauer did compete in the second of a back-to-back game, as he is likely want to do this season. But the Seattle Kraken are not only 0-3 in the second game of a back-to-back, but they also have been shut out in every one of those contests. So we heard from Dan Bylsma getting a pretty good game. Maybe what he said could have been Philip Grubauer's best game, but when you don't give him any run support, I'm a baseball person. When you don't give him any goal support, you're not going to win those games. I don't know. It's just one of those occurrences that we don't quite have a good answer for. And it's really unfortunate. It's truly unfortunate for the Seattle Kraken, certainly for Philip Grubauer. I don't think that helps make a case for him to get more starts necessarily. But maybe that's exactly what has to happen at some point. You got to switch things up, because if it's luck of the draw, like getting the second game of a back-to-back, I mean, I don't know. You hope that you can win games at any point in time, but it's also tough for Philip Grubauer to take all those strays, as they say. So just something that I'm keeping up with. I don't want to talk too much about tomorrow's game, because if those of you who are a part of our Locked On Kraken Insiders community, you already know this, but the amazing Ann Kimmel is going to join us for a squad cast tomorrow. We always have a good time. I hear that Locked On Predators has some fun activities that they like to do that we will participate in. So we're going to have a fun episode. Maybe we'll commiserate, both of us, as the Nashville Predators come into town. We took care of business against the Preds earlier this season, but you never know with either one of these teams. So it's going to be fun, ? But I can't wait for Ann to join the show. We are good friends here as part of the Locked On Network. Always enjoy having Ann Kimmel on the show so we can chop it up and talk hockey. But coming up on today's show, since tomorrow we'll hear from Ann, coming up on today's show, we haven't really done our Firebirds Fridays or our Kansas City Mavericks Mondays. There's just been a lot going on with the Seattle Kraken, so I've wanted to focus on that. But let's spend a little bit of time with our farm updates. That's from the AHL Coachella Valley Firebirds and, of course, the ECHL, the Kansas City Mavericks, who are coming into town here in Tulsa. And that's right, your girl will be there. So coming up next on Locked On Kraken, how are our prospects doing in their respective teams? We'll talk about it on Locked On Kraken coming up. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. And Prize Picks is really cool because, it's a daily fantasy app where you really just have to pick more or less than the projections and the predictions that are offered on the app to get up to 100x your money back. And, I think there's so many cool things about Prize Picks and cool ways to 100x to get and win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. And another cool thing is that Prize Picks, the best way to get in on sports action in over 30 states, which include California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. It's the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy. That would have been great for last year if you were playing Prize Picks last year. So your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If the player leaves in the first half of a game and doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup live. Prize Picks also invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out your lineup if it isn't perfect. I mean, and none of us are perfect, right? So you can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. So sign up today and you'll get $50 instantly when you play your first $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. And so again, download the app today. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, promo code LOCKEDONNHL when you download the Prize Picks app. That will get you $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. Erica L. Ayala here. And, we've got some good news coming from the farm, and we're going to spend more time once things settle in. I just want to see how things are happening with Eberle, how things are happening with Vince Dunn. And, but I do want to talk about our farm system. The Firebirds, a really great feature up on the Kraken website, nhl.com/Kraken, about our head coach of the Firebirds. And it's also on the AHL website, but promising developments for Firebirds. Coach Derek Laxdal enjoys daily conversations with every player, earning praise from top prospects and veterans. Reporting on a weekend road series with the AHL squad, Bob Condor caught up with our AHL affiliate. And, they're 5-0 in their last handful of games. They are 8-5 on the season. And, we have players like Jagger Firkus, Ben Myers, usually there, Max McCormick. We have a lot of really great talent that we're seeing on this Firebirds team. And, I think what's great about the Firebirds right now is that they seem to be making the correct adjustments as needed given the coaching changes. And that is something that has seemed to be a little bit clunky for the Seattle Kraken, but for the Firebirds, it's working really, really well. Now, the Firebirds, they have their next game tomorrow against the Colorado Eagles. And they will also take on the San Diego Gulls. They've been on the road for a really long stretch. Again, Bob Condor catches up with them. So this will be a good chance for the team to see them at home until they hit the road to play the Tucson Roadrunners on Tuesday, November 26th and Wednesday, November 27th. Of course, that is a holiday here in the States. And so when you look at the AHL stat leaders, the Firebirds sit third overall in the Pacific Division. They're chasing the Calgary Wranglers, who are 12-3. Hot, flaming, if you will. Hot start for the Wranglers. Calgary, they're kind of surprising people in the NHL, perhaps. Then the San Jose Barracuda, 9-5. Look at that. 8-5 Coachella Valley Firebirds, the Colorado Eagles, who we play tomorrow, 7-6. The Canucks, Abbotsford Canucks, 7-8. And it goes on and on when it comes to the stats. And so, I think also our Kansas City Mavericks are doing pretty well. The Mavericks right now, 8-3, fourth overall in the conference behind Toledo, who's 9-3. Fort Wayne Comets, who are also 9-3, and the Tulsa Oilers. They've had a rough go of it the last handful of seasons. They did make the playoffs. They met the Kansas City Mavericks in the first round last year, but the Tulsa Oilers are 8-3. and so too are the Kansas City Mavericks. And again, those two teams will face off, actually play 3 games next week, 2 of them here in Tulsa and 1 in Missouri. So, right above Iowa, right above Idaho, Wichita, Tahoe, Kalamazoo, kind of rounding out that middle of the pack, or the top of the middle of the pack in the Western Conference of the ECHL. I can't wait to have Tad O'Had on the show again. He's just a brilliant hockey mind. He's very generous with his hockey knowledge and his knowledge of the organization. So can't wait to get back into some of that. But again, just a lot of storylines coming out of the Seattle Kraken camp. So this is indeed Locked on Kraken. So we're going to stick to that. And just know that we will still check in on our prospects. We'll talk about some players who are on the come up that are really getting their first taste of pro hockey, like a Jagger Firkus, who I've showed you that clip, played that clip a few weeks ago now, from my conversation with Firkus at training camp. So we're going to continue to do all of that. But coming up on Locked on Kraken, we're going to continue on talking about the Seattle Kraken, more so some of the off the ice or community aspects to tomorrow's game at Climate Pledge Arena. This will close out the homestand for the Seattle Kraken, but it's also very impactful for a lot of people, myself included, because this is the Hockey Fights Cancer game for the Seattle Kraken at Climate Pledge Arena. And coming up, I'll tell you some of what the Seattle Kraken have already done and how you can follow along with some of the storytelling that's happening around Hockey Fights Cancer, but specifically coming from the Seattle Kraken. Today's episode of Locked on Kraken brought to you by our friends at Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, then you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality candidates and matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences. Hello, AI. So the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/locked on. Just go to Indeed.com/locked on right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/locked on. Terms and conditions apply. If you need to hire, then you need Indeed. All right, Kraken fans, tomorrow is a game day, and we're going to be joined by the amazing Ann Kimmel. An interesting ride for the Nashville Predators, just like it's been an interesting and sometimes very painful ride for the Seattle Kraken. So you're not going to want to miss that episode. And then Zame and I will recap everything that goes down at Climate Pledge Arena to close out the homestand. Can't do the clean sweep anymore. The Rangers unfortunately blanked us, but still have a chance to stay above 500 and to effectively win this homestand. And that is something that the Seattle Kraken absolutely need. But now I want to switch gears, because since tomorrow is a home game, the Seattle Kraken have a chance to once again lean into some of the community work that they do and Kraken Common Thread. And tomorrow, the Seattle Kraken have Kraken Hockey Fights Cancer Night, presented by Virginia Mason Franciscan Health. And what the Seattle Kraken have been able to do on their website is to tell the stories of a few people who are impacted by cancer. So they have different profiles that they have been sharing. And so this most recent post, this is by Jeff Baker, working the screen at Kraken game to save lives. A blood-drawn clinic at Climate Pledge Arena to screen for prostate cancer during Kraken home game against Nashville is part of Kraken Hockey Fights Cancer, presented by Virginia Mason Franciscan Health. And this just so happens to be the story that I pulled up because my father actually was diagnosed with prostate cancer. He also was fighting Parkinson's, but it was ultimately the cancer that but ultimately he passed away from cancer. And I saw firsthand what it was like to deal with this particular form of cancer. And so I think that it's really important that a lot of the different organizations and sporting leagues are supporting cancer screenings. I've talked before about Jaden Schwartz and the Mandy Schwartz Foundation and bone marrow donations. So the thing that I like, and again, I've said this before, the reason that I took on the role of becoming the host of Locked On Kraken is a lot to do with some of what the Seattle Kraken do off of the ice. And this is a perfect example. So tomorrow, the Seattle Kraken and Virginia Mason Franciscan Health, they have teamed up for Kraken Hockey Fights Cancer during the game against the Nashville Predators. In keeping with the event's emphasis on patient awareness, a station will be set up inside the arena where fans can get blood drawn for a PSA test to screen for prostate cancer. In addition, fans can download and print I Fight For cards from the team's website and pick them up at the arena, where they can write in the name of a family member or friend they know who has dealt with cancer. Signed player jerseys featuring the lavender cancer ribbon inside each number will be sold online via the One Roof Foundation's anchor auction, with proceeds benefiting the Seattle Kraken Hockey Fights Cancer Foundation. And so I also appreciate that in this story, they have Dan Bilesma and the director of Seattle Kraken Medical, Henry Pelto, not only talking about the screening, but Dan Bilesma being on camera as he's going through the screening. And this awareness, the destigmatization of screenings, of talking about cancer is really, really important. And so I'm really grateful to know that people who are going to be at Climate Pledge Arena can have access to these screenings because of the partnership and Hockey Fights Cancer and Kraken common thread. So if you or someone you love, you think should get a screening, you have access to that, access to healthcare just in general is huge. And unfortunately, we do see that sometimes the lack of access to screenings like this can impact how a patient is treated if and when they find cancer. Finding cancer early in stage 1 or 2 versus stage 4, completely different. And I've seen so many countless stories. Unfortunately, my father's cancer was not caught early enough. He did try a few different really kind of experimental drug trials and things of that nature. But cancer is really tough, and prostate cancer was really tough for my dad in a lot of different ways, on top of some of the conditions that he already was dealing with. So this is super personal to me. We end the show saying, be kind to yourselves, be kind to one another. And this is a way that you can do that. Be kind and be good to yourself. If you are eligible, if you are just curious, if you want to learn more, whether you get the screening at Climate Pledge Arena or not, I definitely implore you to take in some of the resources, not just some of the things that we'll see on the ice, or I guess not on the ice anymore, but around the arena. Really listen to some of the stories and why these things are important. The Seattle Kraken have a story of someone in the stands putting up a note on their cell phone because they were an aspiring doctor and saw something on a visiting coach and did something, said something, created that conversation and awareness. And these are things that truly can save lives. And there are those of us who know how difficult it can be to see someone succumb to and lose their battle to cancer. So that's my note on that. Thank you to the Seattle Kraken. Thank you to their partners, of course, including Virginia Mason Franciscan Health. And thank you all for those who are going to stand in solidarity, whether this is something personal to you or not. I thank you on behalf of the memory of my father, for so many other people dealing with cancer of all kinds. I've had cancer impact other people in my family as well. So thank you for all that you do. And again, be kind to yourself. Be kind to one another. When you have an opportunity to get tested and screened for cancers or any other things through opportunities like this, I implore you to at least just go check it out. But until our next episode, hold fast, stay true, and loud and proud we say, as always, let's go Kraken. I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace out, everybody.